And we want to welcome you back inside the Stingray Show. We just finished up with Stephen M. Smith, formerly of Touchdown Alabama Magazine, and now we are about to dive into the Vanderbilt side of this matchup on Saturday. And to do that, we are about to be joined by Joey Dwyer, who is of Vandy on SI. Joey, how are things with you as we sit here awaiting Alabama and Vanderbilt? And can Vanderbilt make it two in a row over Alabama this weekend?
Things are going well, man. Thanks for having me. This is makes the week better. Chris Lee's told me great things about the show and about you, so excited to be on. It's a big weekend for Vanderbilt. Obviously, this team has proven that they are something. I think going there and beating a top 10 team would prove to you that they're a little bit more than anybody thought. That might catapult them into the top 10. The nation will be watching. Vanderbilt's earned the spotlight to this point. It's beat South Carolina on the road, beat Virginia Tech on the road by a few scores, and has taken care of business in games that it should take care of business. But Steven, this is the real test for this team to see kind of what it's made of, and if it loses, it's not an indictment on its season or an indicator that things will go downhill from here. But man, if you can go beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, that's a big deal. Easier said than done, though, as you know.
Talk about last year's matchup, please.
Yeah, I mean that was the game for Vanderbilt football, the
Yes.
biggest win in program history. I mean, you go to a basketball game in March, and half the advertisements on the jumbotron you feel like are relating in some way to Alabama and Vanderbilt beating number one Alabama. I look back at it as the perfect game for Vanderbilt football. It had everything go right. It executed nearly perfectly, and it won that game by 5 points, Stephen. And I think you look at this year's matchup, I don't think Vanderbilt has to be quite as perfect to do it. I think they're just more talented, and I think their style of play gives them a little bit more margin for error than they had this time last year. But man, last year's was probably the best night in program history, and I think would be even a better night than if they were to win on Saturday. It was just it felt like an endless euphoria as you walked out on the field. There was just a cloud hanging over the field, and felt like the people in the stands just would never experience anything like that again. Put a lot of guys on the map, immortalized a lot of guys. Now it's time for something new for this Vanderbilt program, though. They have higher aspirations than just pulling off an upset once in a while. They want to go to the college football playoff. They talk about winning a national championship, and if you want to do it, you go win a game like this.
All right. Now, talk, if you would, about what it means to Vanderbilt right now to be undefeated and to be ranked this far into the season, and also talk about being a part of College Gameday for the first time since 2008.
All of that is a huge deal for this program, and Clark Lee won't tell you that. Maybe he'll tell you that in the spring once this is all over. But this is a huge deal for them. As you know, this has never been the case for them. Really, they've been on College Game Day once in 2008. The 2-10 year 2 years ago made you kind of feel like this thing was off the rails, and maybe it would never return to the level that it is now. Now it's got the nation's eyes on it, and it's a real story too. It's a last to first story, and a lot of guys on this team bet on themselves by coming to Vanderbilt, and a lot of guys didn't have a whole lot of attention before they got to Vanderbilt. They've been counted out. This group is hungry for more, but I think it's got to stop and think, man, this is like Langston Patterson said yesterday. This is a dream, kind of come true for a lot of these guys, and Steven, they've earned it. Like I mentioned, like their resume is good enough for them to be here. They're a top 15 team almost. They're one spot away from the top 15. I mean, it's just a testament to kind of what they've built and all the legwork that's gone in on this. Who knows what happens this weekend, but this team can say it's the second highest rated Vanderbilt team in program history. It can say it's the second team ever on College Game Day. And I think it's still looking for more. Clark Lee has talked about how they've set their goals intentionally higher than this or anything along those lines so that they don't get complacent. They aren't really internalizing this from what I can tell, but I think it matters deeply for them and kind of how they move forward as a program. If you want to be taken seriously, some of these things have to happen for you. And feels like the tide is starting to turn a little bit there in terms of them being viewed as a real serious threat in the league versus kind of the bottom feeder it's been for so long.
That's just unprecedented to think about. I mean, 5-0, nationally ranked, and we're talking about Vanderbilt.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's not a fluky 5-0 either. Like they've
Right.
taken care of business in
Yeah.
every game. It's not like South Carolina missed a field goal with a couple minutes left in the game, and that's why Vanderbilt won. It's Vanderbilt took it to South Carolina on the road, 131-7, blew Virginia Tech out, scored 70 points on Georgia State. Its worst game was against Utah State, and they won by 20 points. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that kind of tells you the story there.
Now, Diego Pavia played amazing last year. He was the talk of college football, but it seems to me that he has upped his game even more. Talk about what you've seen from him from a playing standpoint of going from last year to this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest deal with Diego Pavia is not related to Diego Pavia. I think he's the same player he was a year ago. He's probably improved a little bit. The biggest deal for me is they invested heavily in the offensive line, and
Okay.
it's kind of an idea that Clark Lee got a few years ago from Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, where they were 4-8, and Brian Kelly brings Clark Lee in after that 4-8 year, and basically all they did all offseason was try to improve the line of scrimmage and get better there. And they did, and that was what really revitalized their program there. I look at this Vanderbilt team, and they didn't need to be revitalized, but they threw basically all their money this offseason into the offensive and defensive line. The offensive line is vastly improved, at least in terms of talent and the level of body that they have there. That's a big deal, and Diego Pavia has certainly benefited from that. And then I look at the receiver room where Steven, he doesn't have to be Superman anymore. And I felt like last year he had to be Superman if they were going to win games. He had to make the right decision every time. He had to evade two or three defenders in the backfield if they're going to make a big play. I'm looking at Diego Pavia now, and he's got the luxury to be able to manage the game a little bit. And I don't think he had that last year to where he can distribute it on the perimeter and a guy can go get 10 yards after the catch. I don't know that they really had that a whole lot last year. And I would say that's the biggest difference in his game and his numbers is just that he doesn't have to be Superman anymore. And he's still capable of doing it, don't get me wrong, but he can finally kind of slide back into managing the offense a little bit. And I don't know that he's ever really had that luxury throughout his career.
All right, and another thing that I am really impressed with, I just looked this up. Through the two games that Vanderbilt's had against Power 4 opponents, this Vanderbilt defense has only given up 27 points. Talk
Mhm.
about what you've seen on the defensive side of the football from last year to this year because they have made incredible strides on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, first of all, those two games, I don't think they allowed a second half point in
Right.
either of them. That's a big deal to me as well. I think the biggest difference now is continuity and experience, and I think a lot of people in the media will make that more than it is, but you're just seeing them fly around a little bit more and feel like they're more comfortable with the scheme and more comfortable kind of knowing what exactly it is that their role is. And I also think they have more dynamic players. I don't know that they improved a ton in terms of their personnel over the course of the year, but I just look at this defense and you've got guys who can play in the NFL on the defense. Brandon Fontenette, the star,
Yeah.
comes to mind. Issa Wataha, who hasn't been in the lineup. I don't expect him to play on Saturday, but it's a guy who Clark Lee has tabbed as an NFL player. Martell Height at corner, I think, could be an NFL guy. And then CJ Hurd, the transfer from Florida Atlantic, has also become a guy who has become pretty dynamic for them. And Miles Capers had a really good start to the year. Obviously, Alabama fans probably remember him after the strip sack against Jalen Milroe last year
Yeah.
in that game. But man, I just think they have better players, and I think it took a while last year for them to kind of figure out what they were as a defense, and maybe to even make some timely plays. They're making more timely plays this year as well on third down. So, Steven, they're just all around more dynamic, and I think more comfortable within their identity and what they want to do I guess, as a scheme.
So, Joey, we are up against our final break of the evening. When we come back on the other side of the break, we are going to dive into the matchups this weekend between Alabama and Vanderbilt. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. We will finish it up and get your prediction right after this. Welcome back inside the Stingray Show. My guest this evening from the Vanderbilt side is Joey Dwyer from Vandy on SI. And we were talking before the break about how unprecedented this Vanderbilt run is right here, getting nationally ranked and a really solid resume of 5-0. And when we look at this matchup on Saturday versus Alabama, talk about the hype and the excitement surrounding not only the football team, but the fan base on the opportunity at hand to come into Tuscaloosa and potentially knock off Alabama.
Yeah, there's been a lot of big games in Clark Lea's tenure to this point, and a lot that kind of had seasons riding on them. I'm not sure that there's any one that's bigger than this one, and I guess the only reason that it wouldn't be is because I don't think anything changes all that much if they lose. But the opportunity is just so great if they win, and I just look at it and say, man, this could really vitalize the fan base that has
Yes.
so long been apathetic. They've had a really hard time filling First Bank Stadium. It's getting there this year, but Saturday against Utah State, it wasn't full. You're starting to see that there is still some room to go there. I wonder how much of the fan base shows up for SEC games, like in 2 weeks. Is it all LSU fans in there, or is Vanderbilt represented in there as well?
Right.
That's something to note. But you can start to feel, and certainly you can feel this in the page views, which I enjoy. You're starting to see that people are invested and starting to buy into what Clark Lee is selling a little bit more. I think that's a big deal, and man, Steven, if they win this weekend, I think all bets are off as to where this thing could go. So there's a lot of hype, and I think for good reason at this point until they lose and prove that maybe the hype is a little unwarranted.
All right, and we always wonder with Vanderbilt because there always is an issue with Vanderbilt about depth. They really do well to start the season, and then later on, their depth catches up with them going into this football game on Saturday. How does the depth look for this Vanderbilt football team?
I think that was the story of fall camp, and that it looked better than it has in the past. And obviously, it's not Alabama level depth or Georgia level depth or anything along those lines. But I talked to Clark Lee in June or I think July, and basically half the phone call was him talking about how they needed to get more depth and they needed to get deeper if they wanted to win in November. Vanderbilt's 3-13 in November in Clark Lee's tenure, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to not having enough depth and kind of wearing down as the season
Yeah,
goes. Diego Pavia's health, another thing that I think matters as well in this case, obviously was banged up a little bit this time last year, got
yeah,
progressively worse as the year went on. They've done a better job protecting him and kind of keeping him out of trouble. I don't know that he's been banged up a whole lot, a little bit, I think, but still, I think they're in a good spot with that and better on the line of scrimmage as well. Obviously, not a whole lot of game records on the second unit on the defensive line, but enough guys to be able to play and rotate and maybe keep some of the more impactful guys fresh. So I think the word would be cautiously optimistic in regard to Vanderbilt's depth because we haven't seen it show up in November yet, and
right.
that's really when you're gonna know. But right now, they're playing a lot of guys, and also they're winning by multiple scores every game, so they're able to rest guys later in games. So I think that's something that should be noted as well. Although I think that can be a little bit overrated at this point in the year.
All right, going into this matchup on Saturday, you've covered Vanderbilt for 5 games so far this season. What concerns you the most that Alabama can take advantage of Vanderbilt?
The receiver room, I think, is the pretty obvious answer here. Alabama has one of the better receiver rooms in the country, maybe
Yeah,
the best when you just stock it up based off talent. Vanderbilt's corners have a big call to answer on Saturday. Martell Height probably not going to be able to play a whole lot of offense. Probably going to be mostly playing defense. Colby Taylor really going to have his hands full. I think they're deeper in the cornerback room. Still waiting on real high level talent to continue to play well there. This
right.
is their biggest test yet. They've played some good receivers, Ted Hurst from Georgia State, namely, and then Virginia Tech's got a few as well. Nick Harbor from South Carolina. This is a different level, and Langston Patterson said it yesterday. He's like, you can't simulate Ryan Williams running a post in practice, and
Yeah.
I think it's gonna it's going to be a difficult call for them to answer on Saturday. But if they can at least slow down Alabama through the air and maybe force a turnover or two, which has been impossible against Alabama this year, we'll see what happens. But I think that's really the key. And if Vanderbilt loses this game by multiple scores, which the Vegas spread would indicate that people think it might, it's going to be because it can't control the downfield passing game that Alabama has.
All right, let's flip it. Where do you feel like that Vanderbilt has the advantage? And that's odd for me to say, but where do you feel like that the Vanderbilt has the advantage over Alabama?
It's an interesting question. I think what gets Vanderbilt into this game is the belief it has. Vanderbilt legitimately thinks that it can go in there and win.
Yeah.
A lot of Vanderbilt teams haven't had that in the past. I think that's a big deal. And something to note is we go into Saturday. I guess positionally, maybe the tight end room could be somewhere they take advantage. Eli Stowers, one of the better players on the field Saturday, a potential first round pick, has quietly had a good year, but really hasn't broken out yet. I wonder if he could do that against Alabama's linebacker room, which obviously has some injury trouble. Maybe that hurts Alabama. And Cole Spence, Vanderbilt's second tight end, who's been used mostly as a blocking tight end, also a really good receiver. So I think that's probably where I would look and say Vanderbilt could have an advantage. But Alabama is obviously very talented at every level, and I don't know that I would project Vanderbilt to beat it in any one area. I think it's got to be kind of a cumulative effect here if Vanderbilt's going to win, and it's also got to get some breaks on the road as well, which I think we'll find out if it can on Saturday.
Now, Joey, let me also add this as well, and Alabama fans do not want to hear this or remember this, but Georgia ran the ball on Alabama for 227 yards. What does Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt do well? Run the football. Watch
Yeah.
out for that.
Yeah, Clarkley's kind of motto over the years, and he's got plenty of them. He's a Don Meyer guy from Lipscomb, and Don Meyer had a ton of kind of mottos himself, so Clarkley has kind of piggybacked off that. But Clarkley has always said "run to win," and that's that's what Vanderbilt wants to do. That's what Vanderbilt's going to try to establish its identity on. It's more explosive on the perimeter than it's been in the past, but it's all going to boil down to can Diego Pavia move with his legs a little bit? Can Cedric Alexander and MK Young find some holes? That's a question, and I think Alabama's going to have to be ready to maybe answer the call there a little bit as well. I do think Alabama's stronger up front than maybe it gets credit for at times, but also I think Vanderbilt's running back room has a real opportunity on Saturday to maybe change the dynamic of the game.
All right, we've discussed it. Now let's pick it. How do you see it playing out Saturday in Tuscaloosa? This Vanderbilt team comes in with the expectation that, hey, we did it last year, we can do it again. Their confidence is sky high. How do you see it, Alabama and Vanderbilt, for the first time with both teams ranked in 88 years?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I'm comfortable betting against this Vanderbilt team yet, but also I think we've got to see it before we believe it here. I'm going to guess Alabama wins by 7 or so, maybe one score. I think Vanderbilt's really going to give them a fight, but man, it's so hard to go to Tuscaloosa and win, especially when Alabama is pretty clearly the more talented team. We'll see, though. I wouldn't count this Vanderbilt team out from doing anything at this point. I think they're a better team than they've been in the past. Their talent is a lot closer to Alabama's than it has been in the past. It's got to have a few things go right, and it's got to hit on a few explosive plays, maybe force a few turnovers. Then we can talk. But Stephen, for now, I'm going to guess that Alabama will probably win, but I've been wrong before about this team. I thought they would go 3-9 last year, and they went 7-6. So we'll see. Maybe I'll look stupid, but we'll go from there.
Okay, and as we walk out the door, besides Diego Pavia, who is the X factor for Vanderbilt to pull this game out?
I'd say Martell Height. Their three-way guy, great punt returner, one of the better punt returners in the country. It's not about that, though. It's about him playing cornerback, his natural position. If Martell Height's going to play in the NFL, it's going to be as a cornerback, not as a wide receiver. Man, they need him to have a big game on Saturday. One of the better guys on their roster going into the year. You're guarding Alabama's receivers, though, and
Yeah.
if they can't slow down Ryan Williams and they can't slow down Horton or Jeremy Bernard, it's going to be a rough day for Vanderbilt. Martel Hyatt hasn't had a great year at corner thus far, at least based off what PFF and the numbers would tell you. Time for him to step up. Time for him to be a guy like Vanderbilt has known he could be for a couple months and even a couple years now.
Joey, look, man, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join me. Go and enjoy covering Alabama and Vanderbilt this weekend. Anchor down. Good luck to Vanderbilt, and we will catch up with you later on, okay?
Thanks, man. It was an honor. Let's do it again soon.
Okay, sounds good, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that is going to wrap up the preview show there of Alabama and Vanderbilt. The reason that we were not able to use Chris Lee this evening, our usual Vanderbilt guy, is because he had a death in his immediate family. And so our thoughts and prayers are definitely with Chris Lee during this very difficult time. And hopefully, Chris Lee can get back with us here very, very soon. But, Chris, we are thinking about you, and may God bless you. So, guys, that is going to wrap up another edition of the Stingray Show. When we come back on the Thursday evening edition of the Stingray Show, we are going to be previewing another big matchup in week number 6, and that is the Longhorns of Texas coming off of a bye week going to Gainesville to take on the Gators of Florida. So that will be tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. right back here on the Stingray Show. Have a wonderful Thursday out there, and we will catch you tomorrow evening. And I cannot believe, and I'm still stunned, 5-0 Vandy, nationally ranked, and they have a legitimate shot to come in here and knock off Alabama. What times are we living in?